The movie begins with a man named Charlie, who was taking out some equipment from boxes to repair a plane which was a gift that his wife had given him. When his wife, Sarah, came in, they went back to their home to get some coffee, and after that, for a London while he went to work. When he went to the office, one of his co-workers named Jackson asked him for help to fix his computer. He was busy, but he cannot say no to anyone. He worked in the description and analysis department, and his specialty was cryptography. He was chatting on a computer with an anonymous source named Imqualine, who sent him a file he could not open. Therefore, he went to the restricted area of the department to use a more powerful system to help decrypt the data. Meanwhile, his wife called him, but he told her that he was busy and would call later. At first, he struggled a bit, but eventually got the file open. When he opened it, he was shocked to see dozens of top-secret documents containing the details of a suicide terrorist attack that had been covered up as just another drone strike. After reading that, he caught a clip from a news report saying that some sources still believed it was just an automated attack. He also found out that the head of the agency was involved in the whole thing. He did not know what to do. The next day, when he walked into the office, he unexpectedly found Chief Moore already there. Moore told him to follow him to Director O'Brien's office. The director told him that there had been a serious incident in London, an attack at the hotel where his wife had been staying. Charlie was in disbelief. They showed him footage of the hostage crisis. Charlie was completely broken to see that. He went home and took a shower. The next day, he was still confused as to why there was no other footage in a city packed with cameras on every corner. Chief Moore assured him that nobody was going to get away with what had happened to his wife. But Charlie still insisted that he wanted access to every piece of information they had. Chief Moore told him that they had nothing new, but they would keep him updated if they got any new information, and told him to go home and get some rest. When his wife Sarah's belongings arrived in the country, he opened up her suitcase and found the gift that she had planned to give him. He was completely broken to see that, and decided to get to the bottom of the whole thing on his own. So when he went to work, he tried to gather every detail about the hotel, including the number of cameras installed in the area, the exact times when the suspects entered, and the moments when the vehicle was stolen. He collected all the information and presented the details to his boss. Charlie was able to piece together the time of entry of the suspects, their intentions behind the visit, and even discovered that his wife got caught while trying to save someone else. Using voice recognition, he was able to identify the Russian suspect named Mishka, who kidnapped Sarah. He retrieved footage of the exact moment when his wife was shot to death by that man. He found out that the person who killed Sarah had ties to dozens of terrorist networks across the globe, and he also discovered a link between that entire terror operation and an American woman. She coordinated terror operations. His boss and the other superiors told him that they were already aware of all this, but they chose not to tell him because they were trying to bring down the entire terror network. Even though that group was not directly responsible for Sarah's death, they claimed that the priority remained national security and sovereignty. So instead of taking any real action, they told him to speak with the agency's therapist to determine whether he was still fit to serve at the CIA. He went to the therapist and poured out his frustration in front of her. The next day, he went to the office and put on his badge like usual, but this time, he planted a tiny device on himself to slip in unnoticed. He dived deeply into Operation Galak. Once he gathered all the evidence, he went to the executive floor with a folder and walked straight into Moore's office. He told Chief Moore that he had gone through over 100 restricted access messages and found proof that there was missing data buried in those records. He knew now that someone had wiped key information to cover up the chief's attempt to blow up a hospital in Syria, an analyst base at an Afghan politician's home, and a whole list of other atrocities in the Middle East. Moore's cover-up made him just as guilty, especially since Charlie's signature had been attached to all of those documents. Chief Moore tried to smooth things over with fishy, flashy talk, throwing down unofficial lingo and trying to downplay the whole situation. But Charlie was already wise to their evasive little tactics. He warned them that if anything happened to him, his death or even some shady extradition, every single piece of intel he had would automatically be sent out to 3 high-profile journalists from major papers. Within 24 hours, those stories would blow everything wide open. Hearing that, Moore laughed. But Charlie went on to say that he wanted the CIA's support. He was asking for specialized training, the whole 9 yards, and full access to any and all intel they had on those terrorists. Moore agreed to that part, mostly because he did not believe Charlie would get far. In fact, he figured Charlie might get sidetracked or even give up altogether, which would save them from having their dirty secrets exposed. As soon as Charlie showed up at the CIA training center, the trainer Henderson told Charlie that he was late, although Charlie had arrived right on time. Meanwhile, back at the agency, a full team was being assembled to track down the location of Charlie, who had installed to expose them, and he was not even worried about it. He was way too focused on learning how to shoot. In the middle of the night, Henderson barged into Charlie's room, anxious to know how he planned to take revenge. But Charlie thought that was exactly what he would learn during his training. So Henderson handed him his weapon and asked him to point it at his chest. But fear froze him, and he could not follow through with the order to shoot. All the while, the CIA worked tirelessly to track down every copy of the device containing the information Charlie had hidden. Charlie had been listening in on everything, and when the team finally decrypted the disk they had found, they realized Charlie had been lying to them the whole time. So, they called Henderson in the middle of the night to pull Charlie out of the training. When they went looking for him, they discovered that Charlie was gone. This news caused deep frustration and anger, since all this time Charlie had deceived them enough to receive the necessary training and carry out his plan. With nothing left to do, Moore decided to search for some documents. However, among the windows, he found a hidden microphone, which led him to conclude that Charlie had been listening in on their private discussions. When the agency found out Charlie was in London and heading toward Paris, they decided to leave the task of stopping him to Henderson and his team. Charlie walked the streets of Paris, searching for the American woman who had a link to the terrorist involved in his wife's death. He carefully studied her movements until he managed to infiltrate her apartment while she was out at night. Standing in front of the door and under pressure, he watched a tutorial on how to successfully pick a lock in order to get inside. She had an appointment at a clinic, and he also decided to steal her weapon before quickly leaving, as the woman was returning home at that very moment. Charlie rushed out, and when he thought he had her in his sights, he pointed the gun at her but did not pull the trigger. He returned to his room, extremely nervous. Alone, he discovered that the woman was about to attend an allergy clinic. As a result, he decided to buy as many sunflowers and lilies as he could. On the day of her appointment, an unexpected system failure forced the doctor to leave her alone for a few moments. Charlie seized this opportunity to infiltrate the room and threatened to suffocate her with pollen unless she told him where he could find Schiller, the man who had taken his wife's life. However, when it seemed like the woman gave him the location he needed, Charlie could not quite understand her words. He opened the capsule to try and communicate with her. That was when she took the chance to pounce on him and fight for her life. Even though she managed to break free from the stranger and escape to the street, it did not take long before Charlie tried to shoot her. But she got hit by a car in the middle of the road. Faced with this, Charlie grabbed her phone and decided to flee the scene as quickly as possible. To cope with the intense nerves and fear he was feeling, the man headed to a nightclub in the city. He thought he saw his wife dancing on the floor, but soon realized that Henderson was tailing him. So he bolted out of the club as fast as he could, running non-stop through the dark streets of the city, hoping to lose him. However, Charlie ended up cornering himself, and knowing he had no other choice, he stepped out to talk to Henderson. Henderson informed him that he had tracked him down by following the stolen phone from the terrorist. Instead, he showed him that he had just set up a bomb, one that soon caused panic among everyone present, giving him just enough time to disappear from Henderson's sight. Charlie woke up in the city square and texted Inquilene, asking for help to get to Istanbul because, over time, he had figured out where this informant was. That was when he found her in a bar. She tried to lay low, pretending they were out shopping. The two of them continued their journey to a safer place. On the way, Charlie learned that Inquilene was a widow whose husband had worked for the CIA. The nickname she went by used to belong to him. When they arrived at the place where she had been staying, she revealed that she had been on the run for 6 years but was tired of avoiding danger, which kept her from sleeping at night. They immediately started investigating the terrorists involved in the attack. Schiller was the coordinator of the entire operation and also the hardest one to profile. So, they decided to track down another member, Mishka Blodgett, who was considered the weak link in the organization. Meanwhile, the CIA agents were still looking for Charlie. At the same time, Director O'Brien met with Chief Moore to ask for a report on all of his operations. No matter how dark things got, she needed to be aware of absolutely everything. Even though he guaranteed his full support, it did not take long for her to figure out that he had sent Henderson to Europe. Because of this, O'Brien decided to involve one of her own agents to investigate what was going on. Meanwhile, Charlie discovered that his target, Mishka, was staying at a 5-star hotel in Madrid, and he decided to go after him. He asked Inquilene to stay alert in case she saw Henderson around the area. Charlie noticed that the man he was after usually swam at night in the hotel's rooftop pool, which was reserved exclusively for him. So, he came up with a plan to install a device in the swimming pool before the man headed out for his swim that night. However, Charlie did not realize that Henderson was right on his tail because his attention was focused on another individual he had seen 3 times, and he suspected that person was following him. When Inquilene checked the security cameras and confirmed that this guy also had ties to the CIA, she realized that Henderson, the very man she had been warned about earlier, was also in the building. Inquilene told him to get out of there immediately, but Charlie refused to back down. Once the pool was completely empty, he showed up with Mishka to ask him where he could find Schiller. Charlie reminded him that Schiller had aimed a gun at his wife when she was terrified. However, Blodgett refused to give anything up. With his refusal, Charlie warned him that he was holding a regulator control that would decompress the air between the glass panels holding up the pool. But when Mishka continued to refuse and tried to escape, Charlie decided to push the button. Instantly, the glass in the pool shattered, and no matter how fast Mishka tried to swim to the other side, he ended up falling 16 stories straight to the ground. After this event, Inquilene warned him that he needed to leave the place because Henderson was trying to catch up with him. As he escaped from the colonel, a CIA agent showed up just in time to face Henderson in a brutal fight. Both men, experienced in combat, went at it fiercely to the death. At the CIA headquarters, Director O'Brien called in Chief Moore to ask about Charlie's whereabouts. He responded that the only thing he knew was that Charlie was taking some time off before getting back to work after his loss. Meanwhile, Caleb found out who had been helping Charlie and demanded the tracking of Inquilene's location. At night, a small group of soldiers burst into the house with the intention of capturing her. Faced with this imminent threat, they decided to escape immediately through a back exit, while all the data stored on her computers was destroyed. When they reached the car and tried to drive away, bullets started hitting them. Additionally, a boat was rapidly approaching, eventually cornering them and severely injuring Inquilene. This situation forced Charlie to take her place at the wheel and flee toward the city of Istanbul, leaving the vehicle next to his friend's body in the parking lot where they had met. He started getting new phones and contacting other terrorists like Ellis to deceive him with a fake deal involving the buying and selling of high-caliber weapons, all while making the CIA believe he was in Berlin. When Ellis arrived at the abandoned warehouse where the exchange was set to take place, he received a call from his seller. Charlie told him he was free to check the goods in the trunks, but when Ellis opened them, Charlie warned him that he had activated an explosive with a sensor that would detonate if he moved away from the boxes. Charlie asked him to carefully look at the photograph of the woman inside one of the boxes, as she had died as a result of his attack in London. He then demanded to know where he could find Schiller, prompting Ellis to reveal that the man was on his ship somewhere in the endless Russian waters. Once Charlie had the necessary information, he left, triggering the explosion that ended the terrorist's life. Meanwhile, the CIA realized that Charlie had been deceiving them about his location. Upon arriving at the specified port, Charlie immediately spotted one of the men who would guide him to Schiller. He decided to keep his distance and simply scout the area, but just as he was about to leave, he came face to face with Jackson. Jackson greeted him warmly. He suspected that Jackson's presence there was no coincidence. Despite his reservations, and unable to refuse such persistence, he eventually gave in and agreed to have a coffee with him. Schiller knew that Charlie was not a killer, at least not by the way he had acted. That was why he handed him a loaded weapon, giving him the chance to fulfill the objective of his entire plan. Charlie then took the gun in his hands and pointed it at the man with determination, intent on making him feel the same fear his wife had experienced in her final seconds before she died. However, Charlie was unable to pull the trigger. At that moment, he revealed to the terrorist that he had taken control of the ship and was steering it toward the Gulf of Finland. He explained that this was possible because the ship operated with an encryption system that he had designed himself, allowing him to intervene remotely. He informed him that they had been brought directly into Finnish territorial waters, where the country's navy, along with Interpol agents, were about to intercept them and proceed with their arrest. The terrorist, realizing there was no way to reverse the situation, ordered his team not to resist. The surrender created a deep sense of fulfillment in Charlie. He had avenged his wife's death not with a bullet, but with an even harsher punishment. In a later meeting, Director O'Brien informed the team that she had found damning evidence implicating several high-ranking officials in the agency in unauthorized covert missions. These illegal actions would inevitably lead them to face justice. Finally, having come to terms with the loss of his wife, Charlie visited Sarah's coffin. He silently said goodbye to her. Even Henderson appeared to greet him and congratulate him on the courage he had shown by acting with integrity. The movie ended with Charlie returning home. He looked at the little airplane his wife had given him once again and decided to take it to flight. He soared into the sky, knowing that somewhere among the clouds, his beloved was with him.